sister has always had a soft heart, soft as sweet bread. She cried after the old woman, despite everything. Maybe because of everything. I remember holding her as she wept, both of us covered in soot, her fingers scalded from holding shut the oven door. After the tears, she was quiet. She trailed me through the awful house with its sweetbread walls and sugared windows. I found the clothes we'd arrived in, offered up her kirtle, and she donned it without a word. She showed no whisper of response when we found the treasure in the attic, only nodded vaguely when I asked her to help me fill up the few bags we could easily carry back through the woods. Maybe it would be enough to keep us safe from our stepmother's whims. I do not want to go back there. It was the first she'd spoken in hours. I hesitated outside the witch's cottage, looking back over my shoulder at her. I do not want to go back to them. I sighed, nor do I. But where else can we go? She wrung her fingers together in front of her skirt, eyes downcast and her teeth digging into her lower lip. Eventually, though, she nodded. Fine, you are right. She looked back at the house. Wait 1 minute, there may be something left in the kitchen. The kitchen? I repeated in horror, but she only nodded. Yes, she did not think I paid attention, but I did. I know which of her potions might be useful. If nothing else, we can sell them when we get back. I nodded slowly and followed her back into the cottage, though I stopped in the open arch that led into the kitchen itself. She moved easily through the space, reminding me painfully of just how long she had been under the witch's thumb, while the horrid crone tried to fatten me like a prize hog. She collected some dozen bottles and vials, tucking them carefully in between the bolts of silks and satins we had pilfered from the attic before returning to me. Let us go. Though there was no trail this time, she seemed to know her way through the trees. I asked how once when we paused to wait out the dark, but all she said was that she simply knew now, as though the forest spoke to her in a way it hadn't before. I felt the first thrill of fear at that, but I knew that she was still so scared herself. I refused to let her see it. I tried to coax her into dreaming about what sort of life we might have with the witch's pilfered treasure, and managed to earn a wan smile for my efforts. But it was cold and dark, and soon enough we simply huddled together under a gnarled tree as we waited for the deepest part of night to pass. When grayish dawnlight began to filter through the leaves, she was the first to stand. She had gone quiet again, and only answered me with faint hums or single words as we continued on our way. She seemed more comfortable to be leading us now, but something in the set of her shoulders reminded me of something I could not quite name. Eventually, I lapsed into her silence. When the trees broke apart to reveal the familiar shape of our father's home, she froze. Then she broke into a run, and I was only half a step behind her. The door was already opening when we reached the stoop, and our father met us with his arms open and tears in his eyes. He held us close and apologized, over and over, praising the Lord's name. I embraced him in turn, but alongside the relief in my chest, there was an anger in my gut. It had started a spark, but over the length of our trek back through the woods had grown into a steady flame. I met my sister's eyes over our father's shoulder, and a chill ran through me. If my anger was a flame, then hers was the dead cold of darkest winter. Our father explained that our stepmother had been stricken ill, not long after we left. She was in her room now, asleep, and had been for days. He did not expect her to recover, though he had been following the physician's orders as best he could. Perhaps she shall rally to see you, he offered us hopefully. When neither of us answered, he sighed and dragged a hand down his thick beard. There was more gray in it than I remembered. I know you must be angry with me, with us, he told us wretchedly, that I could lose track of you so easily. It is an unforgivable failing in a father. Lost. I started slightly at the sharp edge in my sister's voice. Our father did too. She had always had a soft voice to match her heart. We were lost, she repeated, staring at him intently. Our father stared back, eyes wide with a hint of fear. Lost, he confirmed at last in little more than a whisper. I dropped my eyes, unable to continue looking at him. My sister did not. Abruptly, she stood from our small table. "We will go see her then." I blinked, startled both by the sudden movement and the conviction in her voice, but I followed her into our stepmother's sick room. That flame of rage flickered a little higher in my chest, and I found that I could not make myself move more than 2 steps inside the door. My sister knelt beside the hateful woman and smoothed a hand over her brow in a gesture so tender it made me want to break something. "Here." She tipped one of the witch's vials against her lips. "This will help." I almost reached out to stop her, but as though she sensed the movement, she held a staying hand back toward me. When the vial was empty, she stood and brushed her hands down the front of her skirt. She did not look at me as she left the room. I hesitated a moment longer behind her, staring at the woman who had left us to the wood in the wild. Already her breathing seemed easier. Anger and love for my sister Ward, twin flames in the center of my chest. She had always borne such a soft heart. Our stepmother was awake and lively within a day. Though shocked by our return, she was mollified enough by the offerings of treasure we had stolen away with, that she simpered and even summoned up some mawkish tears through which to tell us she was so sorry we had been lost to the wood. My rage burned hotter, and my sister grew colder. "We should celebrate your return," our stepmother exclaimed, a shawl wrapped around her shoulders, but no other sign of her illness remaining. "What do you wish for supper, my darlings?" "Sweetbread." I jerked around to stare at my sister, eyes wide and mouth agape. She did not so much as glance at me, but I felt her hand take mine under the table. She smiled at our stepmother, and my throat went dry. "But you are still recovering, stepmother." "I feel quite well, all things considered." "I shall make it," she offered gently. I could have stopped her then, could have clutched her hand in mine and dragged us out. We could have taken the treasure and left. It had been foolish of me to think there was nowhere for us to go. We might go anywhere. Seeing our father again, hearing him refuse to admit what they had done, made me sure of that. But my sister looked at me, just for a moment, and the ice in her gaze froze me to my chair. She was not looking for permission, but I nodded shakily anyway. Our stepmother exclaimed what a good, kind girl she was as she moved into the kitchen. Soon enough, the cloying smell of the baking sweetbread hung thick in the air. It was all I could do not to gag. My sister served the plates while the bread was still steaming gently, even drizzling the last of our honey stores over our parents' portions. "We can always get more at the market now," she said with a hollow little laugh. Our stepmother agreed happily, though our father hesitated a moment before doing so himself. He was watching my sister with a faint wariness as she took her seat beside me. "Go on then, let us eat." They did. We sat in silence. It took our stepmother first, a faint cough, a furrow in her brow. She looked up with confusion, which changed quickly to a horrified realization as she stared at my sister. "You!" Our father choked, red spattering his lips. I looked away, squeezing my sister's hand tight where she had once more taken it beneath the table. We were desperate," he strangled out, reaching for her pleadingly. "I did not want to. She made me." My sister shook her head. "You let her." He collapsed forward onto the table, his breath a wheezing rattle that grew fainter with each passing moment. Our stepmother tried to lunge for us, but her legs gave out and she sprawled across the floor. A scarlet trail, like candy jam, trickled from the corner of her mouth. "You?" She gasped again, glaring balefully up at my sister. "You, little witch." They both began to convulse. I buried my face in my sister's shoulder. I could feel her stroking my hair. Even without raising my head, I knew she did not look away until their last breaths had faded into silence. Then she simply stood, her hands still in mine. We were both silent as we gathered up our bags, still unpacked by the front door, and stepped out into the cool evening. "You are afraid." I swallowed. Yes." She smiled at me, squeezed my hand again, and all I felt was cold. "You do not need to be. I will protect you." My sister has always had a soft heart, soft as poisoned sweetbread. It was a bright and sunny day in Copenhagen. Soren was enjoying the sunset and finishing his Danish coffee. Being a symbol of class, he found drunks to be uncivilized, but those who do not drink to be living a lackluster lifestyle. His life has always been about balance, and enjoying a cocktail without stumbling about was an example of such. He made a point of removing his wallet and paying in cash, fully aware of the eyes upon him. Not just the eyes of the patrons nor waitstaff, but those of the eager predator across the street as well. Sorensen made it a point to walk directly toward the confident young man and briskly step into the alleyway. Jens couldn't believe his luck. The pampered rich boy was walking right to him. He would make quick work of lifting the fool's wallet and... No way! No way! Was the idiot really stepping into the alley at this time of evening? That was rather decider. This arrogant snob was all but asking to be relieved of his cash. Maybe a nice watch would be in his future as well, Jens hoped. He touched his Hanta knife, unwrapping the sheath, ready for a quick draw after just a few more steps. Soren's superb hearing placed the soon-to-be unfortunate pursuer exactly 17 steps behind him, so Soren slowed his pace, closing the gap to 12. Soren fought the urge to turn and slowed down his pace a half step again. It would soon be time. Jens didn't want to give himself away and followed to close, give the dolt some breathing room. Enjoy breathing while you can, you son of a bitch, Jens thought to himself. He slowly pulled the knife out, the flat edge against his palm, blade out ready to use. That's it, you fucking punk. A little more and I'll be right where you want me, thought Soren. He couldn't help himself. Luring the prey was always exciting, even after all this time. Jens' target stopped walking and started looking around as if lost. A tourist, after all. Well, vacation is over, asshole. The man turned and Jens was on him, blade to his throat. The junta was held in a reverse grip right under the neck as soon as Soren turned around. Good boy. He simply couldn't wait anymore. Along with hearing, Soren had a strong sense of smell and knew where to stop and act like a lost tourist. The aggressive would-be mugger fell right into his trap. Speaking Dutch, Jens ordered Soren to turn over his wallet. Soren pretended not to understand and acted like he was startled and about to cry. Seeing real panic in so many eyes made it easy to feign his own. Jens was poor in German but knew how to demand money. The knife was also a universal translator to make his demands known. The imbecile must have been shocked he spoke in English, saying he didn't understand what was being asked. Not being a fan of English either, Jens ordered money now and pressed the sharpened Hanta edge against his ice-cold neck. Jens knew this one would be no trouble. Guy was about to piss himself. He was so SC. What the fuck? The man found some balls after all and lunged away from his knife. This was going to be a fun night after all. Soren moved quickly, darting diagonally away from while he got his own weapon ready. Jens wasted no time in closing the gap and stabbed outward, barely missing his target. Soren turned his body, hearing Jens' movement before it was made. His hands now ready to end this, but not right away. Oh no, that wouldn't do at all. What the hell, this guy wearing fake nails or something? Jens wondered and slashed but missed again. He faked right. Soren went left, and Jens followed, sinking the blade halfway into Soren's chest. Soren heard the noise plenty of times and imitated it perfectly. He covered the wound and looked into the grinning face of his assailant with a stunned exasperation, and let out the faint cry of, why, that so many of his own victims had. There were so many, and soon to be one more. The drool of anticipation spilling out of his mouth where his fangs hungrily awaited. Jens sunk the Hanta to the hilt and gave a fierce twist as he withdrew, instinctively wiping the blade off on his victim. It must have been too dark to see the blood flow out of him, as there wasn't any. No matter, the wallet was right there for the picking. Jens took it and ran. Were you off to Canker? Jens stopped dead in his tracks. A fucking witness. There was no one around, he was sure of it. I said, where are you going, you fucking degenerate? The insult came in Dutch, German, English, and several other languages Jens didn't know. It wasn't just the yelling, it was coming from everywhere. Jens sprinted down the alley and ran into an immovable object. Fear as he had never known overcame him then. The stabbed him as glaring down upon him with his impossibly long fingers. Jens waited for the useless sack of human garbage to make a run for it before standing without a sound. He waited a few seconds before taunting the would-be murderer. He was instantly at his back, his left side, his right side, moving faster than Jens could track with his mere human eyesight. Soren jumped up above Jens and stood on an overhang as he watched him fumble around. Soren could not wait anymore and dropped on the unsuspecting Jens, knocking him to the ground. Soren hoisted him up without effort. It was Jens who pissed, and worse, himself at that moment. Soren's hands were like steel on Jens' shoulders. He showed his meal the tools he would soon be devoured by, and slid an elongated finger easily over Jens' neck, precisely where the vocal cords are severing them. He placed an immensely strong palm of his left hand on the wound, pressing against the wound. The right hand clenched Jens's open jaw and crushed his mandible as if it was a pop can. The left hand was removed as Soren drank greedily. The blood tasted of cheap heroin and gonorrhea, but the toxins were filtered quickly, allowing pure blood to be absorbed. It is a long life when you were born in 1698 in the Union of Denmark-Norway. The race of vampires he was now a part of were a community of few. Birth rates are low among his kind. So much can go wrong when development happens rapidly. Instead of 9 months, it is a matter of weeks. Young ones are a rarity, so loss is expected. Contrary to popular opinion, vampires must be born. A mere bite to a surviving human only leads to death, not the undead. Also, sunlight is not a killer, just a nuisance, so we avoid it when and where we can. The wooden stake in the heart followed by decapitation? Well, I'm afraid to say that part of folklore was accurate. I must make clear we are not bloodthirsty creatures who mindlessly kill. We developed culture and appreciate the finer things in life we have grown accustomed to. Just because we hunt and kill you for food does not mean we are evil. We crave and we take. We have no use for hierarchy or power. We all want our own to succeed. We have a singular need to be filled, and we have so many of you to help. Soren, like all vampires, have a specific anatomy to aid in their need to feed. Nutritional content is stored in the veins and keeps them who they are, like a battery storing energy. Soren has a functioning heart, liver, and brain, along with a reproductive organ. No need for lungs. He never took a breath a day in his long life. No need for kidneys. Toxins are excreted almost immediately after consumption. They are naturally filtered and moved to his penis and disposed of completely. No need for a stomach or intestines. His crackless ass is smooth and flat. Vampires have an extended lower back, if you will. No need are an anus when you never developed a rectum. Skeletal structure is identical to humans. Only there has never been a vampire with a broken bone. His muscular structure is similar in appearance only, but the muscle density is unmatched among any living organism. Like all vampires, Soren will never get sick, cannot drown, and due to his body temperature being absent of heat, cannot be burned. He has the ability to run up Mount Everest without getting tired and walking the bottom the Mariana Trench without being crushed. His liver stores the fluids that were drained out of Jens and separates the blood from everything else. The blood is redistributed throughout the body, while the liver moves the rest of the fluids and toxins to the penis, where Soren excretes the toxins sucked out of Jens and distributes the waste back onto the skin-wrapped shell of his leftovers. He picks up the flesh sack and levitates out of sight. The organs Jens once had become dried and brittle like his bones. Soren crumples Jens like yesterday's news, reducing him to ash to be carried away with the wind. A meal like this will last for 3 to 4 days before more of the blood becomes impure and needs to be replaced. Hence why we encourage you all to procreate and are fortunate you are able to do so with ease. So that is who we are and what we are about. You have met Soren, the rest of his family wants to meet you. So what do we do you for hundreds of years, you may ask? We enjoy life to the fullest. We travel anywhere and everywhere. We observe your developments and take those we consider to be desirable. We watch, we wait, we pray, we thrive. The public is our restaurant. You are all on the menu. Please join us for a bite.